Hi, I'm your host, Erica Van Eaton. I am so excited to share today's episode with you. I brought on my good friend, Laura Evenson, and she's an Akashic coach. My hope for you today in the conversation that you're about to hear is that you feel validated and empowered to come home to your body. In today's episode, we talk about breaking cycles, self validating, telepathic communication, and knowing where your energy is going and where it isn't going. This is a very grounded, very human conversation that is applicable. I hope you find yourself and feel seen and feel hopeful after this conversation to reclaim your power as we laugh about our own personal issues. Inside relationships, we all have them. But what my intention is for you truly is for you to begin to know yourself inside and outside of relationships in a very empowered, grounded way. My intention always is for you to be your greatest healer and for you to feel empowered to take the information that touches you, that feels beneficial for you, and to be able to apply it to your life in everyday situations. Enjoy the conversation today. This is my friend Laura Evenson. She's an Akashic coach, Akashic record reader, and we were having a really good discussion on relationships and how to change them when you've been with someone for so long in regards to codependency. So that is what we're going to dive into a little bit more. Now, one of the main topics that we were talking about is when you've been in relationship with someone so long and you're wanting something different with that person, maybe it's a spouse or another family member or a friend, and it seems like it's caught in this loop. How do we know them differently and how do we know ourselves differently? Because when you're with someone for a long period of time, they are neurologically wired into you. Everything they do, if you just even think about them, there's a whole chemical production that happens in response to just a thought about this person because you've had so many emotions on repeat with them. You've had so many repetitive conversations with them that there's a subconscious programming that has occurred now that is wired into your neurological system in response to them. Is that where you want to go first?
Yeah, I think I think it's confusing because, especially with significant others, there's so much history um, that's there to prove the point that you're trying to make when something's said, for example, that is a trigger. And I know for myself, when I'm trying to react in a new way, a different way, a more highly evolved way, should we say? Um, that most of the time I haven't been able to do that. It's that constant disappointment that I'm having for something that I feel like I should be able to do, but I'm not because the emotion that's behind these triggers, it's very difficult for me at least, to overcome so far.
Yes, it is. And I talked about it from a neurological standpoint right when we just got started, but we also have to look at our ego, our identity is in relationship with this other person too. Our mind is in relationship. Our bodies are in relationship with this other person. So if we exclude one of these parts of ourselves, then there's still going to be something trying to be right. We're always going to have a part of our human if we haven't prepped ourselves, if we haven't really converged all these different aspects of ourselves to come in that are going to try to do everything in its power to be right about why we're in victimhood or why this person's wrong and why we're right or why they're triggering us
Right.
to protect our neurological system, to protect our body's chemistry, to keep us safe. Because even though it's painful, even though it's uncomfortable and it doesn't feel good, the safety of knowing that we are a victim to, or that we are right and they are wrong, or whatever it is that your pattern is with this person, even though it's uncomfortable, it is still more safe because it is known than knowing them differently. Because what if I show up and I am someone different and I am completely vulnerable and the same thing happens and I get hurt all over again, or I get tripped up all over again? So at that point, we can bring our mind back into our heart space. We can bring our ego and talk to that aspect of us, these parts of our human container, and bring them into our heart. So they're not working outside and against, but we're converging them and bringing them in. And then we tell them, we've already experienced the worst. We've already been hurt. We've already been unsafe. We've already been victim to. All the things that it's trying to protect us from, we've actually already experienced. And so if we can bring that awareness into the mind, into the ego, and into the body consciousness, because they're all their own like little humans in our physiology. And I know that can kind of sound schizophrenic, but really your mind, and you have many minds throughout the body, but this one, we're talking about the mind in your head, has its own consciousness, as does your identity, your ego. That has its own consciousness. That's like its own person. So you can, before you even go into conversation with, before you enter the room where they're at, or before you have to call them or text them on the phone, as soon as you wake up in the morning, you know that you're going to roll over and see them there, and it's going to annoy you the way that they're breathing, or whatever it is, or you're going to go out and they're not going to have breakfast and things ready to go like the way that you, whatever it is. First thing, if you can call these bits and pieces to you and begin to take some deep belly breaths, because there is and are realities in which it's a different scenario with this person, because you're a slightly different person in these parallel realities. And to explain that a little bit, string theory explains all of it, and mathematics supports string theory. There's people that don't, but string theory basically is that everything is vibrating on strings, and these strings are woven together to create reality. There's multiple different dimensional realities in which you're existing all the time. And when you've had thoughts of, or when you have chosen not to download something, when you have chosen to be different in your mind, but maybe this physical person didn't, there's a part of your consciousness that is living out now in this other dimensional plane as this other person with different kinds of programs running. And when we're wanting to be different with someone, first, we have to get all of our human aspects on board to come into agreement, so that it lets the guard down, and that it's not actively looking for a trigger. It's not actively looking for evidence in our environment. It's keeping our energy contained and inward. So if my ego and my mind and my body consciousness are on board with my spirit of, okay, I want to stay really present today, I want to keep all my energy home today, then I'm going to breathe up through my system. I'm going to consume my own energy, which keeps all of my energy right here. So instead of dragging the baggage from the past, I'm not doing that. I'm not bringing the memories of how it's been with this person. All my energy is concentrated right here. So right now, I don't know this person, really. It's a brand new person in front of me. If all my energy is present right here, all I am doing is feeling the energy of that other person as they are right now, not who they've been.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It all makes sense. But to actually be in that situation where you know this version of yourself and this version of your partner,
How do we stay
Harder.
present?
It's just harder than
It is, because
down.
everything in your body is going to tell you not to. So in that moment, the only thing you have to be able to break the chemical cycle in your body. And the only way you can give pause to the chemical reactions that happen in your body, because you come into contact with this person, automatically hormones start getting released to the body. Neurohormones start getting released to the mind that are all a vibrational match to the memory of how they've been in the past. And it becomes this loop. So in your body and in your mind. So the only thing to break a loop are like deep belly breaths. Because if you're focusing on that, then you bring your energy back in and
Mhm.
you can feel the breath come down into your body. That gives you a little bit of pause. And if you do that enough, it can stretch the pause. And then you have to remind your mind in that split second that you're taking a breath and taking a pause of, is there a possibility that this person is different than I think they are?
Mhm.
Is there a reality in which our interactions are completely different?
Yeah, yeah. I think that I've definitely tried to start taking a breath in the middle of reacting, and I was doing a good job. But then my partner was like, "Why are you taking deep breaths? Is there something wrong with you? Why are you breathing like that?" It threw me completely back into my annoyance, and so I like, there's so much that can go wrong, I
There
guess,
is. There
when
is.
you're trying to be different. It's just easier said than done in as far as I've experienced.
Absolutely, because they're not doing it consciously with you.
Right.
So that's the hard part. So the only thing that we can do is focus internally. And if they're starting to be like poking you when you're trying to take a breath, you just say, I am trying to know you differently. I'm trying to know myself differently in this moment, and I need a breath.
Mhm. Yeah. I think my husband would say, "I'm not sure what you're talking about."
And that's okay. And you say that's okay, you don't know what I'm talking about. It's truly okay. My husband says that to me often. It's really okay.
It's like, "I don't care what mumbo jumbo you got going on over there. I just wanna know if you had the finances done." That's what he wants to know.
And we have to get to the point where we really don't care, because this is a life journey for our soul evolution. How much soul growth can I have if I'm still worried, even when I'm trying to stay in my power, even when I'm trying to consume my own thoughts, even when I'm trying to consume my own energy, if I am still concerned with appeasing this other person and making them more comfortable than settling into my own body. It
Mhm.
is seen as disrespectful or confrontational when we take a moment to calm our own nervous system when someone is in straight conversation with us.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that they're going to pause with you and allow you to have that space. So I guess it's in those moments where, it's extra challenging on top of it being challenging to begin with.
It is. It's really challenging. I've learned a bit from my oldest son. If you are talking at him really fast, he just shuts you off. He's like, he'll just look away, and you'll see him breathe, and he'll just quiet your voice, your energy. And then when he's ready, he'll turn back and speak to you. We all need to start becoming aware of our energy and not truly caring the what this other person perceives us in that moment, or how they perceive we're conducting ourselves in that moment, because we understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to elevate our internal frequency to something different so that we can be in a different kind of relationship with the people that are triggering us. so that we can hop into a parallel reality in which we are a different couple, or which we are different friends, or which we are a different mother daughter, whatever it is. The only way that we can get into that is through self-regulating our nervous system, keeping our energy home, so that we can elevate our perception, expand our perception. And the only way that we can bring our mind into a state of coherence and going from like a high beta state to inner mind where things are like moving much more coherently, that which allows us more clarity in a situation, which allows us to see different outcomes in conversation with someone, is through regulating the nervous system. And the only way we can do that is by breathing deeply, and whatever you feel in that moment, not making yourself wrong and not resisting it. If you're feeling super annoyed and triggered or judged, or whatever it is you're feeling, resentful, take a breath, honor what you're feeling. Because if you try to like shove it away, you try to like squish it, say that that's not whatever, then you're not signaling to the body that you trust yourself. You're signaling that I don't trust myself. Maybe I'm unworthy, or maybe I'm insecure, or whatever, which just puts you in a more incoherent state.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so familiar with that. I have a long I've convinced myself that I'm wrong about my feelings, and there's a lot of guilt sometimes for feeling the way I do, the frustration that comes up or the resentments that come up. And I've learned through talking to you and through listening to a couple of other people talk about this, that you're not wrong. So that's huge in mentioning that, and I love that you brought that up, because I think a lot of people do feel like their negative feelings about somebody are wrong, even though they have good reason. Like, of course I feel the way I do, you know this has happened for many, many years, or whatever it is. um,
Exactly. And think about even when you're in like growing up and you're told you have food on your plate and you should just be grateful that you have this food on your plate. And you're like, but I hate it. But you can't voice that because it's ungrateful. You're told that you should be grateful. It goes back to these little things. And every time that that happens, you question yourself. And so you start to look and consume the energy around you to seek validation, to seek identity. And so we are codependent then on everything in our environment, because the last thing we're going to do is trust our gut, is to trust what we like, what we don't like, and to voice that, because that's seen as wrong or bad or ungrateful. But everyone on the planet has the whole chemical production to produce every emotion, to produce every feeling. And so it's perfectly natural that we're going to hate some things. It's perfectly natural that we're going to be really pissed off about some things.
mhm.
All of that is valid. And if we breathe through that, accept what we feel, breathe through that, that actually begins to organize your magnetic field, because you're feeding yourself your own energy. So if I'm breathing that in and I'm not making myself wrong, then that signal is in the inferior mesenteric nerve plexus in your root chakra at the base of your spine. If I'm breathing in and I'm safe to feel really pissed off right now, or I'm safe to feel really angry right now, or I'm safe to feel resentful, then we're going to breathe that up to your sacral, and that's going to go into your superior mesenteric nerve plexus. These nerve plexuses then are going to start communicating, and it's going to go all the way up to your heart. And your heart then is going to begin to open to your self love, self trust, because you didn't resist yourself. You didn't make yourself wrong. And that sends a completely different signal to your brain, because it's bringing your heart into coherence, which snaps your magnetic field into coherence around you. Everyone has a magnetic field, just like the earth. When we make ourselves wrong, that field collapses. When that field collapses, what you're feeling from the other people or from your environment starts to really invade your space. And then you feel overcome and overwhelmed by what everyone else is feeling. But if you don't make yourself wrong, then your magnetic field expands out around you, and that gives you a really good boundary. So then it's easy to distinguish who you are versus who this other person is. So even though they might still be living with the baggage, living with the memory of how you have been with them, you're not. In that moment, you can kind of see that they are in an altered state, that they are in a state of past. And you can have compassion for it and understanding for it and not get triggered by it and be like, oh, I'm not that version that they know anymore. I'm this other version, and I can see, I have a bigger picture of what's happening now. And of course, it takes practice.
Yeah, yeah, and as you're talking, it also has to do with them not being wrong. So, and there's so many hundreds and thousands of different perspectives of things, and each of us have our own layer over our lens from all of the experiences that we've had. So even though we're 100% positive that something happened like XYZ, the person next to me can see it completely different. And so coming to your spouse or partner or friend or whoever you're having these feelings or baggage with, it's like allowing for you to know that there really is no 100% right in anything. And
Yes.
that there is at least a 10% right for both of you about something. And so when you
Amen.
come to the table knowing that, you're less likely to come with that energy of, I'm right, you're wrong, which happens a lot. It has happened in my past. I'll just speak for myself.
I think you're speaking for everyone on the planet.
So,
That is brilliant. Yes, because in their reality, through their neural network, they absolutely are right. We did make them feel this way. They do know this version of us. So
right,
if we understand, oh, they have a truth and I have a truth, I don't need to, nor could I ever conform them to my truth. Then it releases the pressure of, oh, I just get to let them be in their truth and my and mine and me and mine. I'm not responsible for how they see the world or how they know me or how they know our relationship. I'm just responsible for how I know myself in this relationship, in this environment.
right. And in a perfect world, we would have Dr. Phil's cameras all over so that we could rewind and prove that we are actually right. But it just doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
It's probably beneficial for me because I'd probably be wrong more than I'm right.
So my husband's actually right most of the time, I have to admit. Um, I mean, when it comes to historical facts, not necessarily our relationship, but
Yeah. God, my kid would use that against me all the time. I told you.
mm,
Dang it.
oh my gosh.
This is such an important conversation to have because there's a lot of freedom in it. When we let go and know how to manage our own energy, there's so much more freedom in knowing ourselves in relationship and outside of relationship. And not being embarrassed to know ourselves differently or to be like, oh, I was projecting a lot of, I was seeking out an argument. I was seeking out resistance from this other person so I could validate my ego, so I could validate my mind to make my mind feel safe or to make my ego feel safe. I think about when my oldest was born and we didn't know he was going to be born with Down syndrome. And there was this whole grieving process because you have these preconceived notions about what a family is going to be like, of what it's going to be like to raise your own kids based off of your experiences. And when something like that happens, like the rug is ripped out from under your feet, there's no foundation for you to stand on because you don't know like how the hell your life is going to look. It's completely different. So you go through this whole grieving process. At the same time, you're falling in love with this incredible being in
Mhm.
front of you. So it's so confusing. What one of the first things I knew for absolutely sure, because he was continually downloading information into my brain. Although I didn't understand that's what he was doing, I just knew that I couldn't be grieving in front of him. I couldn't even be processing those emotions for him. And if I did, he would not look at me. He could not look at me because it was too much.
Hmm.
So
Right.
I lived by a really good friend at the time, and we ran miles and miles and miles, and I would run and she'd let me talk, and I would get like all my emotions out and just feel really settled and calm, come back, and then I could be centered with him and just experience the love side with him, and then he could look me in the eye. And he started looking me in the eye from birth. Like most babies don't really do that. My other two never did.
Yeah.
But he was different. And so we have to really become aware of how much energy we're sending out ahead of time.
So, okay, can we rewind a little bit? Like, how did you realize that you were speaking or getting telepathic communication from your son? How did you finally understand that? How did it come in?
And until I lost it. So I lost it when he started school. Um, it wasn't until I lost it and then I figured out how to get it back. So basically around year 6, when he was 6, is when I figured out, oh, he was communicating with me the whole time. Since he was my firstborn, it was really brilliant in our soul's design and how we decided to play with each other. He came in first. I didn't have any idea what it was like to have a baby or
Mhm.
what it was supposed to, I had my preconceived notions of things, but I didn't understand like that wasn't normal until I had my second. And then I didn't kind of, it was a
Interesting.
totally different, yeah. When I had my second, I remember looking at him and I was like, I don't know you. And I had this freak out moment because I was like, I don't know you. When I had my first and he was born, that's when my soul took my humanness aside and was like, you know him. And then I heard him say, I know you too. And I could feel it with my whole body. 22 months later, when I had my second, I didn't have that experience at all.
So you just thought that was normal, that you would feel that with every child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So it's been this whole evolution with him understanding emotions and how much we affect each other. And he doesn't bring baggage forward. So I have the gift of living with someone that's not judging me from past experiences, thank God. So it's easier for me to have this conversation with you and be like, well, this is how we do it. Even though I still struggle with some relationships in my own life, but I've felt what it's like when you're not bringing past into the present
Through him.
through him.
Wow. That's,
Because he's so present here and now.
mhm.
So he's not thinking about all your issues. He's not trying to be right either. He's not trying to make you wrong. He just is. And if he's not enjoying the energy that you're putting out, he's taken a moment of pause, which makes me self reflect and be like, oh, I need to, I'm putting too much at him right now. I'm projecting out instead of reflecting in this conversation. If I'm like, okay, when we get home, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. And he's like, whoop, pause, look away. I'm like, oh, I just spewed all this stuff that I want.
So it's like he's attracted when you're higher vibrational and he's repelled when you're not. He doesn't want to
Yeah.
be around it because it makes him uncomfortable.
It's too much. It's too overwhelming. And it's like, it's because he doesn't just hear the words, he feels them. So you have felt when someone's just talking at you
Hmm.
and it just pisses you off. You're like, he's not talking to me. He's just talking at me, telling me what to do. Like you felt that the penetration of someone just like trying to direct you or trying to control your energy.
Boss me around. Yeah.
Yeah. He feels that with every conversation if we're not aware, like a million times more. So we take that understanding and we realize we are all projecting past traumas all day long. If we're like joking around and having a good time with someone, that is actually the most present we usually are in conversation when we're laughing about something really stupid. You're finding humor, you're laughing, you're moving a lot of energy, you're very present right there, right then. In other conversation, we are normally pulling from past memory, from past trauma. And it's underlying in our words and it's underlying in our conversations with others.
Okay. So it's almost like we also it's touching on boundaries, so setting boundaries as well as we approach this new way of being with somebody. And it almost seems like it's almost you're almost having to train them as well. Like this is what I need. I need to take a breath sometimes as we're talking to ground myself or however you
Mm-hmm.
explain it. So
Mm-hmm.
that the reaction from the person you're speaking to can be different.
Yeah.
And is that something that would help to then flip into the reality that you're wanting?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Because you're trusting yourself and you're validating yourself in that moment. I know what I need. I'm not making myself wrong for needing this. I'm going to voice that. So I am validating myself again when I hear myself say what I need. That, of course, is going to elevate your energy field because you're going to feel much more calm and you're going to be in a much more self trusting, self loving place.
Hmm.
And I think what can get confusing is okay, if I'm like self absorbed right now in my own little world, am I not going to feel compassion or kindness or am I not going to feel empathy for this other person? And that's not it at all. It's very uplifting because if my energy, if my frequency is moving much more coherently, then I am gifting coherence to whoever is around me. And I'm gifting their nervous system peace and calm so that they have space to process what they need to process. I'm not dysregulating them,
Hmm.
I'm helping them regulate.
Yeah. And you're coming with a different energy so that they're not feeling attacked, which is, I think, the way I probably made my spouse feel
I don't know what you're talking about.
many times. Or judged. That's what I critique.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nobody's going to be perfect at this. We just have to play with it and we have to experiment to see how much time do I need? Do I need like 10 seconds? Do I need a minute? Do I need to leave the room and then come back in? And can I let this other person know this actually isn't about you at all? This
Hmm.
is not about you. This is me learning how to regulate myself so that I can show up better, so that I can show up more fully, more present with you.
Yeah. And in managing expectations of what this looks like, I might pause and take a breath so that when that does happen, he's not like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
What? This
He's
is
not
weird.
like,
You don't usually
she's,
do
she's
that. What?
already upset with me. Look at her breathe.
Exactly. She's taking a deep breath. Oh my God, here we go. Like,
I'm going to hear it. Okay.
what did I do wrong now?
It is. It's like if we just give the people a heads up, they can think what they think and they can be like, this is all hogwash, whatever. Hogwash. Isn't that a funny word? I don't know if that's just a old Kansas word or like a
When you
real
think
word.
about it, it's like, where did that come from? Why is it
I,
applied here?
I grew up out in the country, but I don't know. I worked for a farmer for many years. Um, but they can think what they want to think, and that's okay. They're allowed to have their opinions. They're just not allowed to project them into your field. And they can't. They will probably try. People in your environment are going to try because they're not maybe consciously aware of consuming their own energy. But if you trust yourself, your electromagnetic field is strong. Whatever is happening can't penetrate and come in because your energy is in such a nice, organized flow state that your vibration is stronger and higher than anything that's going to come in from your environment.
So is theirs bouncing off, or does it just not affect me anymore because I'm so confident in myself and who I am and all of those things I'm filled with self-love, let's say in the future. And and so what anybody else says to me is kind of it just doesn't affect me anymore. Is that
It
how
doesn't
it
it
works?
doesn't affect you as much and it doesn't really penetrate your field.
Okay, so how do we get there?
It's through the pause. Because every time you pause and you break the old chemical addiction to how it's been, you pause all the baggage. Because every moment is new. You're trillions of atoms of energy. You're literally folding into and back out of the energy field, coming back into form in the tiniest, slightest second. We can't see it with our physical eyes, but when we fold into the field, we are folding into the vibration that we are, the memory of the vibration that we are. If I'm in an argument with someone and I'm triggered and I'm reacting, my overriding vibration is baggage, is past memory, and I'm folding into that memory because that's my main vibration. If I take a moment and I pause and I come back into my body and I say, okay, I'm not wrong for what I'm feeling. It's okay that I'm feeling this. And I'm breathing that back up through my body system, up into my heart space. Then I'm starting to fold into a different reality. I'm starting to fold into a different field. I'm detaching from the old memory and I'm folding into a new way of being.
Okay, so how do you stay there? Because I feel like there's that saying of like, if you, it's something like, if you feel really enlightened, then go spend some time with your family, like
Mm-hmm.
your extended family, let's say
Mm-hmm.
at a holiday.
Yeah.
See how enlightened
We're just keeping it 100.
So how do you like, okay, let's say it works. You're like, hey, that worked. I conducted myself the way I want to. But then the next time you're like back to your old stuff again. Like, how do you actually stick in the new reality?
It's a continued practice. Remember, it took time to program your subconscious mind into the old version of you. To stay present, really, what I have found was I can only speak to what has worked for me and what has worked for other people that I've worked with.
Mm-hmm.
The guidance that I had from beings far smarter than me was that's really what intentions are meant for. You're pre building a memory in the field when you set an intention. I want the visit to go like this. I want myself to feel XYZ when I am present with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never really about how they are in that intention. It's about you.
Right.
and how you are in that intention. The only time that shifts a little bit is like, with my oldest son, you can go back and listen to whatever in the beginning podcast, how he taught me how to build memories for him. So we can set an intention when our children are still very connected to us. But again, it's how I feel. So he came into my dream state and he showed himself doing these things that he couldn't yet do in the physical world. I felt in my dreams so much joy, so much gratitude, so much love and appreciation for what he was able to do because I could see his smile and I could feel what he felt. But it was still about me. It was still about me harnessing those emotions when I thought about him
And what
because it
was it
it,
about?
it is about belief because it built a bridge for him.
Mhm.
Because in my mind, if I'm feeling these and thinking about him, when I'm thinking about him, then it changes my perception of him.
Exactly.
It
Yes.
pops me into a parallel reality in which that's true.
Yes. So I'm so happy you're there because that was my next question is like when we have this perception of somebody and we're projecting that onto them, but we want a new reality with them. How do we come to those new beliefs about that person? Because I've found it's really difficult.
It is. It is. That goes back to intention. So it comes back to you intending, I want to feel love in this connection with this person. I want to feel an emotional connection with this person that is elevated, that is open, that is fun or playful. And so I need to feel that within myself first. So I felt that in myself first because of the dreams that I had. It gave me the visual and it gave me the blueprint. And so then throughout my day, I felt joy. I felt so much gratitude whenever I thought of my son because it ignited the memory of the dream. So now, if I want to have that same kind of experience, again, it isn't about that other person, but it does build a bridge for that other person to step into. It's offering them like a plate of frequency. Do you want to play with me here? This is where I'm playing when I think of you. When I think of you, I am feeling joy. When I think of you, I am feeling play and gratitude and acceptance. So let's say a really good example is they've done studies where they've put monks, like two monks in a city with a lot of crime. And the monks won't do anything. They'll just meditate and go about their lives. And crime decreases like 10%, something quite a bit within a very large radius around them. And nothing has changed except their energy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were still people committing crimes, just not as many. So the people that wanted to step into that new reality where their vibration was higher and they made different choices did. The other people that didn't want to, they still wanted to play out this other experience of life and still commit the crime did. If you're wanting to change, but there's no way you can do it inside of a relationship because you're just too damaged with that person and you can't govern yourself. Usually that just happens within abuse cases where you're being very dominated, very controlled energetically by someone and you're just having a really hard time getting out of it. And so extracting a person from that situation is the highest and best. Now, let's say you become consciously aware and you're just in a relationship where you have outgrown the frequency of someone and they're no longer a viable match for you because you have chosen something different. Then maybe you are being more sovereign than you are aware of. It's just that the vibration is causing too much friction for you to really expand. Because I'm doing the work, I'm feeling free within my own container, but I can feel the friction over here. And no matter what I do to self consume, to elevate the experience with this other human, it's just not a viable match. Well, that soul has chosen a different path than you. That soul has chosen to live out different experiences than you. So most of their energy is not going to be in a parallel reality with you. Most of their energy is going to be concentrated here in this reality that you're experiencing with them, because that's the desire. They haven't learned what they wanted to learn. They haven't quite experienced everything they wanted to experience. And that's not wrong.
Hmm.
That's okay. But if I am doing all these things and I'm at a place of neutrality, but I still don't feel good about this person, it's time for me to release myself and go somewhere different. It
Yes,
comes back to you always.
which brings up like social and cultural conditioning. So, for example, we learn that marriage is meant to be forever, but yet there's 50% of Americans are getting divorced right now. So, where does social conditioning come in all of this? And how do you
Ever.
work through that part?
It's programmed into our field what a marriage is supposed to look like, what a relationship with someone is supposed to look like. We see it in movies, we read it in books, we hear about it through religion. And a person's main objective when they come here is soul evolution, is soul growth. And it's coming home to self. And the resurrection is remembering that you are an aspect of God and that God is something that you are. It's not something outside of you, it's something within you that you are meant to express here. Now, not everyone here is on the path to come into that kind of recognition.
Right.
There are those that have chosen to stay very much asleep, so to speak, the illusion of separatism as a human. And then there are those that are remembering, that are conscious and wanting to really experience the full depth of their soul that they can hear while they're here in this human container. So those are two very different paths. Now, it's not saying that you can't co create a life with someone that is not awake, but how strong are you? Is that what you want? Do you want to continually experience someone that is not spiritually awakened to understanding that they are I am? Or are you wanting to see how much can I expand and how much can I spread my wings outside of a relationship in which someone is such a vibrational difference than me? What do I want here? There's no right or wrong because there's going to be soul growth with both.
Right. Which also brings up the whole issue of, or not issue, but the thought of right or wrong. There really is no right or wrong. There's only choices and learning. And there's a lot of people feeling stuck right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you are in that place of stuckness, what are some ways to move forward? I mean, even if you quote unquote made the wrong choice, which we're learning there's that's not a thing. Um, at least it's moving forward, taking action, making a choice is taking action on something.
Yeah, you learned what you don't like. You learned what doesn't feel good. So you still expanded in that moment if you appreciate the education that you got,
Mhm.
the wisdom that you got. Cool, that felt like crap. Well, I know that that's not the direction of that I want to go. It's not bad. I still learned from it. So there's still evolution and growth over time. You think about the stock market that's like, boop, don't, up, down, up, down, up, down. But, if it's a good index fund, then it's still going to keep going up, but it's going to have dips and it keeps going up. That's the evolution of our choices of our soul, the choice points that we have. People think that, Earth is this free will situation, but
Mhm.
the free will from my understanding, often comes after an experience. How do I choose to move through it? Do I choose to be victim to it and let it crush me down? Or do I let it dip me down a little bit, experience from it, self consume, not make myself wrong for experiencing that, and allow that to propel me then to the next level?
I think the confusing part for me there is like, I've also learned that there are no mistakes and
Mhm.
that everything is divinely timed. So, in the sense of like choosing something that's not for my best and highest good, wouldn't everything be for my best and highest good if it's all learning?
If
I,
you allow yourself to learn from it, what we're saying is sometimes people don't choose to learn from it. They stay stuck in victimhood to it. So, in that point, they have chosen not to learn because they are continuing to play out the story that this things just don't work out for me. This just never changes. And it's powerless, and
mhm.
it's feeling victim too. So in those moments, you're not heart centered. You're being pushed around energetically by your environment because your electromagnetic field has completely crushed in, and you're just bombarded by outside noise, determining what direction your energy goes instead of you determining your energy flow.
So it's about like hanging on to the definition of yourself and holding on to this role of victim that's keeping you in that. So for people that are stuck in that way, what are some steps they can take to get out of that situation? Because it's not always, well, I would say it's never because they truly want to be there. Why would we choose to be miserable in a victim type of role?
Sometimes people do get something out of victimhood. So they are getting something out of it. It's just not necessarily soul growth.
But there is a best way, right? That so it's all learning, but the best way forward would be the one that expands you the most or the one that brings you the most expansion in love and joy, or what?
Instead of saying the best way, maybe we should call it the highest frequency way. There are many different frequency paths that you can take after an experience. If we choose self empowerment, self consumption of our emotions, and it changes our thoughts, it elevates our thoughts, which elevates our perception of the experience, then we have shifted ourselves onto a higher vibrational timeline in which there are new opportunities to play in a more joy filled way. And the experiences there, when they occur, aren't quite the big drops as they are in the reality that's full of victimhood. Those drops are going to be really hard because the frequency is so much lower. So instead of looking at them as best decisions or worst decisions, it's just frequency.
Mm-hmm. And it also has to do with how you grew up, how you're raised. Who are your role models? Were they victims? So,
Mm-hmm.
and getting beyond that as an adult, that you can, I mean, I think it took me a while to see that I didn't have to be victim to some of my relationships in my life once I became an adult. I had a really hard time with my sister, for example. And I think my husband, when I was 40, was like, you don't have to make this choice anymore that you're making. And it was like a light bulb moment, like a deer in headlights, like, oh my God, he's right. I don't have to make this choice of going back for more every time when I'm shot down or whatever it was.
It's not bad. The length of time it takes you to learn a lesson. Sometimes people put a label on time.
Hmm.
It's too much time is bad.
But we all feel that crunch of time. And like, I myself feel like it's taken me a long time to learn certain lessons in my life, and I would have really liked to learn them earlier, you know? And as we grow older, you know, oh, now I don't have as much time. I wish I would have known all of this before.
It doesn't matter what it took in your past to learn something because there was still opportunities for learning along the way. And you implemented those and it pushed you into a direction of spirituality. It pushed you into a direction of coming home to know yourself. And wasn't that worth it to know yourself as source, to remember yourself as source, and to have those moments when you feel so free in your meditative state and feel so elevated that you can feel the expansion that you are. And it's brilliant and it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think when I think back to everything that I went through and how long it has taken, I had to go through all that stuff to end up here where I
And,
am now.
and
So,
now you know. So it doesn't have to take that long in the future. You have the tools to move through stuff much faster. You have the awareness, the consciousness to catch yourself when you're falling trapped into victimhood again, when you're falling into a codependent way of being again. You have the awareness to move through it much quicker than you did before. And it will continue to get quicker as time goes on. But if you would have been able to move through stuff that quickly back in your youth, would you have learned or would you have taken it for granted?
yeah, that's a good point.
And remember, energy is eternal. So it might seem like we have such a limited amount of time because this physical container, this is the only time that I'm just going to be sitting across from you in this particular bodysuit. But after we leave this earth, our energy is eternal. We're going to meet and we're going to grow and we're going to play in many different realms, many different planets, who knows where, what and what we can be doing.
Yeah.
So it's just a blip.
Yeah. And that's such a fun thing to think about. And also brings up how different people may seem like they're playing a negative role in your life when it's not actually negative. They're actually, that you guys have agreed, you have an agreement that this person is going to be, let's say, your overbearing father so that you can learn how to come into your own power, let's say.
Yes.
Um, so that's also interesting. And that, you know, the difficult relationship that I've had with my sister, you know, it's most likely that we're very, very close souls that have agreed to go through this experience for different reasons for each other.
We have all been the person who has hurt and the person who has hurted. And can you imagine how much love we have to have on a soul level to play those roles when we know that it's going to be painful here on earth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's so incredible to think about all of the details of how everything works. It's a miracle.
And then when we think about the bigger picture in that way, which you can only get to if we're having an open, conscious conversation like we're having right now, and if you can have that with yourself. Now, how do you view all of those relationships that you were struggling with? You're like, wow, it makes you see them differently and
Mm-hmm.
know them differently. And now you have a completely different feeling towards them. You're in a different emotional state in regards to this person in your life. And
Like they're all actors. Like, thanks for being
yeah,
that person for me.
don't you feel that gratitude now coming in? And you're like, I am so grateful for all the times you pissed me off. Like, thank you so much. I know that hurt you, but I am so grateful because I learned because it forced me to come home. Thank you, thank you, thank you for playing with us today. Thank you for sharing your energy and choosing to heal with me today, with us today. When you heal, we all heal. So, thank you for liking and subscribing and having a beautiful ripple effect on this earth. You matter. Your healing matters. Your empowerment matters. to us all. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much, love and light.